All good? Thank you for being here. Morena, everybody. Welcome to the Social Sustainability Subcommittee, fourth meeting of the year, I think it is. Thank you all for taking the time out of your day to be here, much appreciated. We have a relatively straightforward agenda today, which is great, so I'm hoping there'll be a bit of space on the tail end for us to just have a bit of a members discussion. And I've asked Lawrence to talk to us a little bit about the social sector as well, as part of that kaupapa. Leading into that, I've asked Lawrence, perhaps you'd like to do the opening karakia, either in English or Māori, or te reo Māori, whichever you prefer.
Kia ora. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kia ora, everyone. Let's do the council blessing. As we deliberate on the issues before us, we trust that we will reflect positively on the communities we serve. Let us all seek to be effective and just, so that with courage, vision and energy, we provide positive leadership in a spirit of harmony and compassion.
Kia ora.
Kia ora koutou.
Thank you very much for that, Lawrence. Number 3, we have apologies. I have an apology from Mike from the Waikanai Community Board. He's involved with the polling votes and the elections. Just a reminder, we have an election on. Please vote. Although I'm not too sure who I'm going to vote for yet at the moment, but bit of homework for tomorrow morning. Any declarations of interest in relation to items on the agenda from anyone? Going once, going twice? Can we please documentate that? No? Okay, that's great. Any public speaking time on items in relation to the agenda? I'm not picking that there is. We've got then members' business. Leave of absence. Leave of absence. Any leave of absence required? I think that is no. Hey, Nigel, great to see you. And any matters of an urgent nature, nothing's been brought to my attention, so I guess we're skipping on that. Normally there is a C there, which I've been told has been removed out of the template in regards to members' business, or members' updates, I think it was. But we'll move that to the end of the agenda, and we'll see how we go for time. We are now moving into updates, and our first update, 7.1, Asset Management Plan for Older Persons Housing. We have Claire Winter is the author, authoriser Mike Mendonca. Take it away, Claire.
Actually, I'll kick off.
Take it away, Mike.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
And just noting that the presentation is actually on the hub under your agenda as an appendice, if you so wish.
Thanks, man. So a real treat this morning, elected members. We have 2 asset management plans to update you on. First of all, older persons housing. Any sheer coincidence, but cemeteries straight after that. Can I just start by introducing some key staff who actually run the assets of older persons housing? So I've got Donna sitting next to me. Donna's the acting manager who looks after this area, Donna Query. Claire Winter, who you met before, who is the brains behind our asset management plans. And down the back, Lynn McMillan. So you might not have met Lynn, but she's the person who deals with our tenants hand on hand every day, kind of face-to-face, not hand-on-hand, face-to-face, is dealing with the real issues that we have with our tenants all the time. Our tenants are, a lot of them are very vulnerable people, and Lynn deals with those issues sensitively and with great aplomb. It's a really tough gig, so I just wanted to acknowledge Lynn down the back, and she'll be happy to answer any specific questions when we get to that bit. We've also got Stephen and Darren, I see, lurking in the background. So really good to have them here, because one of the key things I want to talk about today is there are 2 key pieces of work going on with older persons housing. One is a strategic review, and the other is the asset management plan itself. And those are 2 distinct but linked, related pieces of work. Next week in SOF, you will be debating both of those, but for today, I wanted to focus on the asset management plan. Can we get the slides up, please, Evan? So just a reminder, you've got 11 asset management plans coming to subcommittees. Most of them are actually coming to this subcommittee, but some are going to the Climate and Environment subcommittee as well. We're about halfway through. Are really happy with the progress that we're making. We know that the auditors will be looking very, very closely at asset management plans for all councils this year, which is not the only reason, but one of the main reasons that we're paying much more attention to this area than we have in the past. So we're going to start by looking at older persons housing, and I don't need to remind you that housing in this district, across New Zealand actually, is one of the main priorities, right? And so housing is plastered through all of our strategic documentation, all of our visioning documentation, all of our vision for the future documentation. Really complex area. Just a reminder that the stuff we have, we've got just over 100 assets that we hear about shortly. That's tiny beer when it comes to the issues that we have with respect to housing in the district and in New Zealand. So it's really important to have that context that what we're talking about today isn't actually going to solve all our problems. Sure, it's a building block, but it's probably not the biggest gig in town and not the only lever that we have with respect to the housing crisis. Lots of different parts of the council look at different parts of housing. And as I said before, Darren and Stephen are here. They're watching. They're talking about the strategic review. I don't want to get into that today. That's not the purpose of the agenda item today. The agenda item today is specifically to talk about the stuff in the right-hand box, which is the asset management planning. Of course, those things are linked, and Darren and I talk a lot about the review, but specifically we are talking about the asset management plan today. As I said, next week, stage one of Older Persons Housing Strategic Review it comes to SOF. So just before I launch in, and it's really great to have Lynn here, when we talk about assets and funding and stuff, it's really easy to forget that actually what we're talking about here are actually people's homes. We're very sensitive to that, very sensitive to communicating with our tenants. I mean, tenants are such a cold word, but when you go and talk with people and listen to them and their lives and the situations they find themselves in, I think it's really, really important to remember, yep, these are assets, they have funding, blah, blah, and kind of condition, blah, blah, but at the end of the day, these are people's homes. Just like you and I live in homes, other people live in these assets, but they are homes. So with that, I'll pass on to Claire to talk in a hard-ass way about the funding in the edgy way that we, the hard edges of the approach around asset management. Thanks, Claire.
Thank you very much. Mike, am I on?
Yep.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. Could we have the next slide, Mike, if you don't mind? So I'll just cover a little bit of the funding concerns. So we're funded 20 to 45% by district-wide rates, and then 50 to 80% by rental income, which is quite a wide range. We tend to get up to the 80% by rental income, which is a trend which is good, but we've got that flexibility, which is also kind towards the asset managers. Current funding is 15.5 million at the moment over the 10-year period. We are going to be looking at asking you for an additional 2.2 capex funding over for the long-term plan, and the reason for that is to cover issues like drainage issues at some of the sites, some fencing that needs to be renewed, double glazing by 2030, which we'd like to do just for a lot of different reasons, and some solar installations or replacements. Some of the assets have solar water power. They're not the best kind. We'd like to look at installing much more appropriate solar panels.
So over what period is that funding?
That's a 10-year period. The 2.2 over 10 years, yeah, over that 10-year period. The other bits and bobs that we were looking at is some pathways, which are health and safety issues and so on. That's me.
Donna?
Kia ora koutou. Thank you very much for having us here today. It's a pleasure to see all of you. I'd like to talk about the condition of assets. Crikey, Mike. Thank you very much. So we use a grading scale called the CGI, or the Condition Grade Index, and we assess the units and the properties every 3 years. So the next slide is a demonstration of the condition of our assets at the moment, with 1 being the best condition and 5 being kind of go to jail condition, really. So we never want to be there. It's also important to realise that incorporates the whole of the property, so everything from paths and fences and to the actual internal condition of the properties as well.
Sorry, just what standards are measured against?
Sorry, Nigel, can I just ask you to pop your, you've got 3 people online at the moment.
Oh, sorry.
And
No,
sorry, could I just stop you there for a second?
Yep.
When would you like to do questions? You happy? We're sort of good on time today, so you happy to do them as we go? Or would you like to sort of do them in clumps?
I think we're happy to go as we go, given the nature
Yeah.
of the meeting this morning.
Yeah.
and
No,
a bit of
just
time.
wondering what it's benchmarked against.
So,
So is
sorry,
there a sort of a national standard, or is this a standard that we've set?
So when we look, so what we've done is, what we do when we look at condition is we've set up a survey methodology, which is our standard for how the condition, assessors go to do the conditions. So that's our standard. There's lots of other standards, but those are covered under the IPWEA or APOPO now, as it's called. But we have a survey methodology, which is what we use to grade our conditions against.
Cool.
So there's a whole industry around there, and it's really
Yeah.
important because asset valuation and depreciation hang off that. So if we get that wrong, it really plays havoc with our balance sheet. So there's a whole structure around that.
thank you. Yeah. So, and just bear in mind that the condition, when we measure the condition, it doesn't necessarily mean that if it's at 80% or that it's going to fall over. It's a portion of that creates the whole picture.
That's right.
Next slide, Mike. So to manage, thank you. To manage the units themselves, we have a really robust renewal program, which is also driven by Lynn McMillan, who you've already met. And so that program uses a model which we call the decant model, and essentially we have decant or vacant, a vacant unit in most of our complexes, which means that we can move our tenants into while we refurbish the unit. So refurbishing the unit means that we're going to actually strip out everything from linings, flooring, replace any of the fixtures and fittings, replace the kitchen. If some of our units have Ducks Quest plumbing, so we'll replace that at the same time. If there's any asbestos or any mold issues or anything like that, then we would that we can't see, obviously, then we would take care of those at the same time as well. So that program's been influenced over a few years by external influence, essentially, and impacted, of course, by COVID and the supply chain, which affected how many we can do. Last year, Lynn had a bonzi year, actually, or up till now, and did 14 units in the last year. So that's tracking along really well. And we've actually completed 84 of the 118 units have had a full refurbishment. So that's actually looking really good.
Just through Mr. Chair, with the upgrades that have been done, I mean, I've actually fortunate enough to have actually seen some of them, but I know there's been, is it just replacing sort of like for like, or I know the building code has changed as far as insulation requirements. Are we upgrading it to the current code or not?
So specific to insulation, we're actually exceeding the current code. So the bare minimum would be the healthy home standard, of course, but we're mindful that those things can change in the future. So we've tried to future-proof and to do it to an actual higher grade than what's actually required under the healthy home standards. Yep. Any questions? Running alongside the renewal program is the Healthy Homes program. So bearing in mind that the Healthy Homes legislation came into play in 2019, we'd already done some of the refurbishments, so we've had to actually retrofit some of those earlier refurbishments and to include the Healthy Home standards. So you'll probably recall from the last meeting, Healthy Homes includes, as Johnny already identified, insulation, ventilation, which is extraction fans in the bathrooms and the kitchen, the heating, which is installation of heat pump, making sure moisture ingress and drainage is taken care of, and also any draft stopping. So that's checking all the seals and the stays around the windows and any of the draft strips around doors and things like that to bring them up to Healthy Home standards. That program it runs alongside the renewal program, and that'll be completed. That deadline is for July 1st, 2025, but will be completed by July 1st, 2024. Okay. So the next slide just gives you an indication of an original condition, essentially, for one of our units, and what you can expect it to look like afterwards. So, yeah. Any questions in that space?
Can
Okay,
I ask a question though?
Sure, yes, Kathy.
How many of the units are wheelchair accessible? I mean, I've been in one or a couple over at Arnold Grove, and they're pretty pokey inside, but it's still a person's home, as Mike said, and it's, you know. But I'm just thinking about wheelchair accessibility for people in wheelchairs.
Yeah. So actually, Lynn wouldn't mind. Would you like to answer that one quickly? She might answer.
Linda, feel free to come up, just grab a seat at the table here if you like, and then you can just use the microphone. That would be much appreciated. Yep, that's the one. Lovely. You just need to turn it off when you're finished. That'd be great. Thank you.
Cool. So none of the units are officially accessible in terms of wheelchair access. They are access friendly, but we have had 3 tenants in the time I've been tenancy manager who have transitioned to wheelchair and have managed to remain quite happily within the units. And that's largely because of the properties that they rented were of the open plan style, you know, easy access, flat level entry access in. And so that was helpful for them, and they managed to, you know, continue their tenancies with us. Some of the properties aren't open plan and some are small. For instance, Arnold Grove and Paraparuma is tiny, so wheelchair in that property would be challenging for sure. Although with the refurbishments we are opening up the kitchen living space there also, so there's not that bottleneck. So it's really just comes down to the entry doors, which are the existing, and you know, the current footprint, which means any changes to make it, you know, the accessible standard would be extremely difficult and very, very expensive.
Can I just add to that? So with all of our assets, Councillor, a lot of them were built kind of 100 to 50 years ago, and the accessibility needs have changed substantially since then. So all of our asset management plans for stuff like public toilets, community halls, cemeteries, tracks and trails is coming to you in a couple of months. All of them identify accessibility as an issue. So as Lynn says, there's no easy answer. It's hugely expensive to try and retrofit, but the review that is being undertaken at the moment by the strategy and growth team definitely has accessibility as one of the drivers for what new stock might look like. So it's something that is a problem for us now, but as we strategically upgrade and renew or upgrade our assets, that's the time for us to think about accessibility and perhaps improve our offering in that regard.
One of the things I'd also add to that is I've just recently seen one of the new upgrades, and the bathroom facilities, very open plan. That's the stuff that was very, very user-friendly from an access perspective, and wheelchair access as well.
Right. Could I have another question following
Certainly
on from that
can.
thing? And I know you've mentioned the long-term plan, I'm finally going into the long-term plan, but I was just wondering, the Arnold Grove flats, they're in the intensification zone. So I'm just wondering if there was any thought given to demolishing them because they're quite old and doing maybe 3 stories.
So do you mind if so that's a question for next week with the strategic review rather than we're talking about the current assets today, but the opportunity next week to ask those sorts of questions, Councillor. Yep.
Good. So just acknowledging Kim online has a question.
Kia ora tātou. It's a very similar question, and I think you've already answered it, and it was about, has there any consideration been to making them not just accessible, but for elder people, you know, sometimes the lower benches and all that kind of stuff, and how that all fits in if people who have walkers and things like that. Are we, when we're retrofitting them, are we considering that and maybe not just doing a standard refit, replace the same benches? Because I noticed in there it's got like really high cupboards. Yeah, so that's basically what I was, you know, like you've said, the bathrooms are wider now. I know wheelchair access, you know, you need wider halls, turning space and all that kind of stuff. So I think you've kind of answered that.
Yep.
But I think it's more, like you said, it's more than just a house, it's a home, and just to make it easier for them to live as opposed to just being the house that they have to manage.
Thanks, Kim.
So this is really just covering off the projects that we sort of mentioned earlier, but this kind of gives you the timeline for our plan. internal renewals are ongoing outside of, again, that strategic plan, so that may change this. And we'd like to look at double glazing sort of around the 2030 mark. Again, that's just really covering off the plan that we've got in terms of our renewals and upgrades. And this is really just a data point for you to look at the spread of where the majority of the units are situated versus the population. So really just a data point for interest. So if there's any questions on that, feel free to ask. No. And again, this is where these units are actually located. The vast majority are in Paraparaumu, but what this is looking at is in terms of our register of interest. So we have a list of people who've noted their interest in having a unit or moving into a unit. The majority of our interest is indicated to be in the Paraparaumu area as their first preference, and that's largely linked to the district health board that they're. Have I used the wrong term? Apologies if I have. Okay.
Oh, it's gone, but yeah, we can understand.
Okay. Okay.
I don't think there's anything, it's replaced it, to be honest.
Yeah. So wherever their health needs are going to be met in a greater degree, that's where their preference will be. So that's our challenge at the moment, is assigning that that location.
Hang on, I just wanted to clarify. Sorry, my apologies. The fact that it isn't a different district, I'm picking that's why we've got such a large percentage of housing in Otaki, because that wouldn't fall under the so-called classification of a Tier 1 council that we currently have. Was that because the rules around a lot of that sort of stuff have got that invisible line that sort of breaks Otaki off from the rest of the district? Has that been impacted? Is that one of the reasons for that, or was it just because there was more need?
There's no rhyme or reason for why we have our apartments. You have to remember that these were all built under different. Covered Coast District Council didn't exist when I think any of these were built.
True.
So what we have at the moment is a random collection of great assets that were built for good reasons, but there is no strategy behind why they are where they are at the moment, which is the piece of work that Darren and Stephen are looking at, is to kind of look back at what we've got, where we've come from, and if we had our time again, what would we do? And what we would do is better match demand with supply, which isn't the case at the moment.
Cool, thanks for that.
And so this is again just covering demand. This is basically just talking about what our policy currently is, which is a very outdated policy, and again that will be covered. I think the focus was on the strategic plan, and then looking again, once we decide what the strategic plan is, then we look at the policy, determining depending on what the outcome of that is. So that policy does need to be looked at, but it's what we've got currently, and so that's what we have to work towards. It's a point-based system. Points are allocated in terms of who's interested in which area, and the different criteria are considered, and then the unit is allocated. But again, there's the pressure on this demand and allocation where it comes in waves. It's not constant, and it also is driven by the fact that these are not large, high turnover units. The turnover is really low, which is, I suppose you could look at that as a good thing. They're happy where they are, so yeah, that's what this one covers. Did you want to add anything to that, Mike?
So just to finish off, can I just depress you a little bit, elected members? Depress, yeah. So as is often the case in this country, the more we find out about the natural hazards that we have, the more kind of dispiriting it is, and the more you ask yourself why we did what we did when we established our cities and towns. So, and Kapiti District is no exception, and our older person housing is no exception either. So this is just showing you where we expect liquefaction to happen in the event of a certain kind of earthquake, and unfortunately a whole bunch of our older person housing is located in the liquefaction zone. No surprise either, like most of the district, we're between the mountains and the sea, and the water has to go somewhere. So a good proportion of our older person's housing is actually in flood zones, and I think Councillor Spears gave us a really good photograph of that in action last year, where we narrowly avoided some of our older person's housing being flooded because of a fence that we'd recently installed. A fence that doubles up as a flood protection, by the way. And finally, we tsunami is kind of the poor cousin of natural hazards, but again, for Kapiti District, and there's a wider discussion to be had as well, we are in a very vulnerable to tsunami, and so are our older persons' accommodation. These maps are about to change, by the way, so the government's recently changed from a traffic light system having just a you are or you aren't in a tsunami zone, but I can assure you that for a good chunk of our district, we are in a tsunami zone. So that's it from us. Happy to take any questions on older persons housing. But before I do that, I just would like to point out that while Donna's sitting nice and quietly behind me, you should know that she is actually a former professional country and western singer of great talent. Yeah, and where she's dragged me into a duet at a karaoke on Friday night. I'd just like to officially thank Donna for that. It's a private occasion.
Someone will video that. Yes.
Happy to take any questions. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Lovely. Thank you for the presentation. Nigel.
He's having issued the licence for that occasion. So got a heads up on it. It's like a fun time. What qualifies as older persons housing? So at what age can they qualify? Sorry? 65. So with the point system that we have, so do people over 65, do they fall outside of the WINS category in terms of, like, say, emergency housing?
Yeah, so what I'd like to do, if you're happy,
'Cause they have a point
Lynn, are you
system
happy
too,
to answer
right?
these? Because Lynn actually manages
Okay.
manages the allocations as well as everything else, and so we'll have first-hand knowledge of all of your questions.
Okay.
Just to tie that up about, it's really, the part I was interested
Please do.
No, please don't. Sorry. So it was really around that the point system, and I wasn't quite sure about, because I know WINS have a points allocation. So most of our motels are currently filled with emergency housing, and a lot of those people are waiting, and they're on a list. And I've only just learned about this not that long ago, but there's a point system that's allocated to them. So if any of those people are over 65, what happens? Are they still part of the WINS thing? And if not, how much more of that burden falls on council?
People over 65 also qualify for kāinga ora housing if they have need. They would be assessed by kāinga ora or MSD to determine their need, and as you mentioned, they do have a point system. It's an entirely different system to ours, and they're not related in any way. So a person who's looking for a home might be on both registers. Typically, my experiences are not, but some in dire need, of course, are likely to be, or we'd recommend that they be, even if we're having that conversation, because we're not in a position usually to house anyone urgently. So if their need's really urgent, they need to be registered with MSD.
Another one, this might be later on for the strategic conversation, but have we, and I apologise for not knowing this, but have we ever had a system where people could rent to buy? So pensioners, we call that anymore, superannuitants, could actually be renting to buy, and then effectively we could be building more with that. So I don't know, is that ever been part of the
I think the answer to that question is no. That is not something we have entertained or looked at in any detail in the past.
Because I mean, the average cost of these units, it's not high. They're pretty low cost. It's pretty low cost housing, isn't it?
Well, it's rate subsidised, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. No, that was it.
And Nigel, I think we've got the one of the rent-to-own options is in the community land trust that's being looked at the moment as well.
It's hard to get mortgages in 65. They don't think you can pass the distance.
Don't have an order here, but Rob.
Oh, thank you. How big is the waiting list?
Yeah, that always comes up. It's reasonably steady. It was sitting around 62 to 65-ish, but recently there's been a significant turnover I guess unfortunately. And that has meant that I'm currently placing a number of people from the register, which means that number has actually gone down into the 50s, down as potentially 52, 53. There's one or two coming on, there's always inquiries coming through. But yeah, it's pleasing that we've been able to place some people very recently.
I've got another one. How active are we in terms of encouraging people to be part of that list? So again, I suppose we don't want to be too active, would we? Because we've got there's already more demand than supply. But I just wondered again with the WINS thing, if there's a significant identifiable need. Do people get priority in that situation, or is it just because their number system doesn't apply to ours? But so how do we prioritise that, or do we not?
Connected with the MSD system in any regard, really. But if people present with urgent need, everything like that is taken into account in regards to the way our register is managed and the way that our point system is allocated. So there's a level of discretion available to us to use when allocating points. There's a basis and a maximum of 44 points, but there's a discretionary 10 points. So for instance, if someone was presenting, with an urgent need, or let's say they're on the register already, and they've been waiting a couple of years, and then all of a sudden the property they're in is going to be sold. So that conversation would be, okay, that's a change to your circumstances. I can apply a level of discretion to your application. I can add additional points, and automatically that person's going to come up that bit sooner. And if timing works out well, we might have a property that's becoming ready. Obviously, people are moving into only refurbished units, so if there's one that's coming up and it meets their time frame where they have to be out of their current property, we will match them with that. So that discretion has been in place since Guru came into power, actually, and was quite keen to see people with urgent need and some of their needs being met. It does then mean that people that have been on the register longer are potentially still waiting longer. So it's a bit of a balance, but it is great to be able to house someone in need if we can.
Okay. And it's not a bit, and it doesn't require a political answer, but if we were to double the stock of housing in this form of housing, do you think that would meet the demand, or would that exceed the demand, or would it still be less than demand? I know there's 50 now, but it's 50 now because they're full, right? But
I think that if we had more stock, we would likely fill that stock reasonably easily. What we don't do currently is advertise in any way. And there's many, many people in our district who don't even know about our housing, and I come across those people all the time. If it was more publicly, notified that we have this kind of housing, I suspect the interest would be much greater, and there'd be more people having it as a desired outcome as they age, and more people on the register. But we don't advertise.
Councillor, that might be a question that you might want to ask again next week when these guys present the strategic review. Yeah.
Can I just add that as it's already been mentioned, but the greatest demand is in Paraparaumu, and we have that imbalance of stock with 66 units in Otaki and 44 in Paraparaumu, and the vast majority of people on the wait list want Paraparaumu and minimal turnover there, which is just, I guess that's just timing, life timing. So it's just sluggish in that respect. Yeah.
Right, I was waiting to see which one went red. Okay, no, we've got Kim online. Just going to move to her.
Kia ora, the wait list, is that, when you're on the wait list, is it the Kapiti wait list, or do they get to select, is there an option to say you prefer housing in Otaki, or do they just have to go to the nearest house? Or is that in your criteria?
The waitlist or applicant register, as it's referred to, is open to anyone in Kapiti and those beyond Kapiti, in fact. When the applications are filled out, they have an option to indicate preference of location, and we do point out in the application form that difference where we have the Otaki district is under the Palms North Hospital, and the rest of Kapiti falls under CCDHB or Te Whatu Ora now, but there's still a distinction with the hospital care. I think it's important that people know that when they're registering, and so people will generally indicate one or other, but some people, if they've got connection to Otaki, they might indicate all areas, and if people have got urgent need, they'll definitely likely say all areas.
Yeah, yeah. And just noting that you said the discrepancy in the stock available between Paraparaumu and Otaki, also noting that there are no retirement villages in Otaki, so that those kaumātua housings are all we have, because there is no retirement facilities like they have in Paraparaumu or Waikanae.
Noted.
Thanks, Kim.
Just adding to that, Kim, actually, that's a very important note. But I do note also that there's some smaller housing being built in Otaki, like sort of 50, 55 plus is the requirement to get into those. Not quite a retirement home, but there are some options that are being built up there as well. It'd be nice to see a bit more of those spread out the district as well, but that's a private.
Yeah,
there are. Kathy.
Thank you. Lynn, you were talking about discretion before. Do you have discretion, like with people with intellectual disabilities or other disabilities, to enable them to access pensioner houses under 65 due to the fact that some people with disabilities' lifespan is not as great as other people's?
Unfortunately, we don't have that discretion.
Sorry, Lynn, if I could just ask you, it'll go on for you. Yeah, there you go.
Unfortunately, we don't have that ability, no, because of the restriction at the moment for the housing being for 65 years and over.
I get to pick. Rob.
Go. Thank you. Look, just looking to the future and not being political at all, the current government has deemed that we're going to have hundreds of thousands of people flock to the coast in the next next millisecond. And we've had to, put these intensification projects and, put on the operative district plan where we've got, 15-storey buildings and big developments, 6-storey buildings within walking distance of the railway station. My point is that we are looking at having partnerships with developers, Kaingaroa developers, and we're looking at big parcels of land, particularly in Otaki, being developed. Is there any progress with potential partnerships with these developments in allocating areas for, lower cost housing and rental housing and council rentals? Has there been any sort of talk about that?
So thanks, Councillor. Just a reminder, so the discussion this morning is specifically about the assets that we currently own and operate.
Sure, yeah.
Those are all good questions, but can I ask you to reserve those for next week when the team will be presenting on the strategic review and where we're going big picture. So today we're just trying to focus on what we
and
already
that's
have.
more strategically located for the government situation too.
Johnny.
Yeah, I guess this question is for you, Mike, and hopefully it is related to the renewal sort of the assets and stuff like that. So, with you're actually going to be asking for more kaching or more money in the long-term plan for these renewals. So I guess that's going to impact on the rents for these tenants or you'll be looking at increasing the rents to get some return on that investment that you're putting into the properties?
So a couple of things in there, Johnny. Firstly, you're no doubt critically aware of what's happened to prices in the construction sector over the last 4 years when we set the last LTP. Secondly, with respect to setting rent, there are very strict rules in place as to how we might do that. There's a lot of uncertainty, which is why in the council's revenue and financing policy, there's a window. Is it 25 to 40% is the rates subsidy? So we've got a little bit of room to play with respect to rent and making sure that there aren't great big kind of spikes, because, as I said right at the start, these are people's homes, right? And you can't just be doing that because the market's doing that. Well, you could, but that's certainly not the approach that the council's taken as a landlord. Private sector, I can't speak for that sector. So it's a long-winded way of saying, yes, there will be an impact on rent, but we're very mindful of what that means for people and try to smooth that out as best we can.
If I could add to that, this was something that was quite heavily discussed at the last long-term plan, or through the last long-term plan process. The rentals went up quite significantly, percentage-wise, but that was to be offset by the ability to access the accommodation supplement. So there was no actual rent increase, if you like, to the actual tenants themselves. I picked that there will also be some robust conversation during this long-term process around that specific stuff, if you like. Yeah, that's going to be very, very interesting to see. Did you want to comment back on that, Johnny?
Yeah.
Sorry, I've just wait for the microphone.
Yeah, it's just that I know that the rents are pretty low for those people, and I mean that's fair enough. But you know, if people had to rent elsewhere, it would be quite a lot more.
Oh, look, Johnny, and the interesting thing is that when that was set, this was literally before we just had this explosion in pricings and rentals and that sort of stuff. So at the time, we actually thought it was actually a bit excessive. That's how much rents have changed over the last 3 years. And I think it's the important aspect of us looking at, again, coming back, these are homes, these are disadvantaged people, and this is a community service that we provide as council as well. I think Chris Pavan over there's got something you'd like to say. And Mike.
So I can tell you that the report you're going to get next week talks explicitly about this and what the opportunity cost is of what the rent would be if it weren't done by the council.
So again, Chris.
Yeah, so definitely, obviously, I'm looking at that in terms of the current what we're forgoing in terms of market rate compared to what we're charging, but also understanding options in terms of trying to bridge that gap. So we were talking about the current scenario, and then also the future work in terms of working through options to address that issue.
Anything else there, Chris? You got that look on your face.
Thank you. I think I just really want to reiterate Mike's comment to you that I know today the team is discussing the really good work that they already have underway with our current assets and how we're working on those. Some of the issues that you're raising that you're interested in, even to do with income and what the opportunities are for the future, definitely on the go. We are talking about that in the background, and that will be something that we do get into at our next session. So just really mindful that I know there's a lot of interest. We also, I guess we're trying not to muddy the waters, give you the opportunity to really get into what you have now, and then what the sort of where to for next. So we're here today just so we could hear that and the questions of interest, but Mike's quite right that we probably aren't going to answer those more fully today.
Lovely. Oh, Jackie, you might just need to pop your one on.
Yeah, thanks. Just two quick questions for you, Lynn. Were any of the units ever made pet friendly for people with either companions they've had a long time, cats and dogs, or support dogs?
You said were they made?
Yeah, were they
Not
made? Are they now? I know a time when they weren't.
Weren't.
Yeah, they weren't pet friendly at all.
Yeah.
Pets weren't allowed.
Yeah. So I can't really speak for pre my time as to what the intention was at the beginning, but you know, the inheritance of the role I'm in, it was that pets are not permitted, but we have softened that quite a lot since. So, for instance, if a person was on the register, had an existing cat, you know, the cat might be 15 years old or 12 years old or whatever, we are making exceptions in some of those circumstances. We currently have one person on the register who has limited sight and requires a dog, companion dog, and that, you know, that's obviously something that we will be looking to accommodate if that person reaches the point of being allocated a property. So I don't think we've got a closed mind about it, but currently it's currently definitely a no to dogs, but cats there's discretion around.
That's good to know, and I would encourage support for the council to provide fencing if there is a dog allowed, and just so that's not an extra cost. So we've got quite a few new tenants going in now to refurbish properties. I know that as a landlord we don't have to supply any curtains or window coverings. So are you referring people straight to Sustainability Trust if there is a need?
Up until very recently, that's correct. We were not supplying window treatments as part of the refurbishment program. That's recently changed. So with a little bit of limitation, we are now providing blinds to the kitchen spaces because of the potential safety risk of people putting up drapes very close to where ovens are. So that's quite new, and obviously there's a desire there to increase that provision. It's obviously budget related. Yes, we do refer to the Sustainability Trust, and I do sort of run a bit of a curtain little exchange thing where I can, if I've got a tenancy that's been vacated and there's perfectly great drapes there, I'll put them aside, and just as I'd have just this morning, Chappie's going to be picking up a bundle of curtains and trying them for his unit, so he's pretty grateful. But yes, we do work in with the Sustainability Trust, and we do promote these services annually as well.
Oh, that's really nice. It sounds like there's some really good thinking going on. Yeah, and if he's an Otaki, if he needs any mending or shortening done, just get in touch with Energize Otaki, and they will whip out the sewing machines and do that work. Okay.
Okay, I've got a few questions. First of all, and might not be for you this one, Lynn, pets and companion animals, if we're wanting to relook at that as a policy or policy setting, when's the most appropriate time to have that discussion, or will that come in through the long-term plan, or is it one for next week?
So we don't actually have a review on at the moment. It's a bit of a minefield. So we're kind of comfortable with where Lynn's landed on that, which is a soft line rather than a hard line. You'd appreciate that if we let someone have a cat, and then if somebody wants to have a puma or a lynx, I'm kind of just being silly just for the pay. Then where do you draw the line? And if we have a dog and someone's got a terrier, that's fine. But if then someone wants a Rottweiler, with the greatest respect to Rottweiler owners, but you understand that.
Small dog versus big dog.
Or small naughty dog versus big. So
big softy dog, yeah, okay, fair call.
So it's really difficult. So from a policy perspective, the easiest thing to do is just say no, and that's nice and clean. But of course, that's popped up recently, and that causes you issues as politically. So I'm actually comfortable with where Lynn's landed. We don't have any intention to actually do any policy work on that. And actually, as soon as you get into that, it's a bit of a minefield.
I noticed that part of your budget line had about 1.2 on fencing. Is that to make? Is that looking towards turning the yards, if you like, into yards that are self-contained, so to speak?
No. So that's mostly renewal money. So replacing existing assets that are had it rather than changing the configurations.
I appreciate the clarity on that. Right, questions. Now, my first one is that home versus, we're hearing a lot about the ability for people to make it a home and that sort of stuff. Just want to make sure that we are allowing that. If people want to put a nail in the walls or nails in the walls and that sort of stuff, or even add a little bit of colour or that sort of stuff, that we are allowing them to create that home-like feeling. As we know, if you like going to 7.2, when people move out of these spaces, it's a permanent move, so to speak, in life. And usually if they're there for a while. As such, I'm picking that as people move out, that the place gets a bit of a once-over before the next person moves in anyway, as such. But what's our policy around that, as such?
Yep. So when people move out the property is refurbished, so new people moving in are moving into a brand new interior, as was described earlier. So what we say to the people moving in is absolutely make this your home. Yes, you can put things on the wall, just be mindful how you put them on the wall. And if you've got any large heavy items such as large mirrors or wall units that need to be fixed to the wall, we'll actually provide the service through our maintenance officer to do that, because we want to sort of maintain the integrity of the refurbished work. But we certainly encourage people to make it their home. And another thing with regard to providing window treatments is, if we were to do it, that leaves little scope for adding your own personality to the interior of the property. So that's a benefit currently, that they can do what they like in that respect, and also with their gardens. But you know, we are trying to uphold the integrity of the refurbishment work, and we're more than happy to take requests from tenants if there's something outside of that they want. But no longer do we permit people to do work in the properties as far as redecoration. That was the case when I came on board 7 years ago. I've got very vivid examples of photographs of one unit that was a different colour in every room: bright cerise, purple, orange and lime, all different colours, patterned carpet, and the poor existing tenant had inherited that property, and that's what he lived with for the duration, unfortunately. So giving people free licence to you know, be creative with colour and the walls, etc., is not really an option.
Okay, so the white walls, and they can decorate with pictures or, you know, bits and pieces as well. Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's fine.
Yeah.
And by the way, just congratulating the unit that I saw. I've been to one a couple of years ago. It's pretty pokey, and then the upgrade to a very similar one I thought was excellent. It's nice and roomy, more room than I thought, to be honest. Good bit of storage, that sort of thing. But don't know what I meant by that. Fencing. Yeah, just clarifying. When we through the long-term plan last time, when we were talking about the accommodation supplements, for people being able to apply for the accommodation supplements, part of that aspect was us assisting them in doing that. Has that been happening? As such, do we make that when people are applying per se? But do we help them through that process?
We have limited ability in regards to, you know, we're sort of a little bit removed from the financial situations of people intimately involved in that. We encourage and advise them that they would likely be eligible for assistance through the accommodation supplement. So if their only income is superannuation, they definitely would qualify for accommodation supplement. So that information is shared with them, of course. We can encourage them, but we don't really have resource to handhold through the process. But we've certainly, when we did the significant rent increase that you're talking about a couple of years ago, there was a lot of work done. We had representatives from Work and Income alongside us through that process. They were given you know, handouts from Work and Income in regards to accessing the assistance and that kind of thing. And it's mentioned every year with the annual rent increase letters that, about, you know, checking in with Work and Income about qualification for entitlement. So I think currently we do as much as possible. If a particular tenant was having challenges, you know, let's say they are struggling a little bit with their tenancy, getting a little bit older, and we're aware of that because we have our tenant liaison service that is directly involved with their wellbeing and welfare. So we have a great oversight of the situation with all of our tenants. So there's a bit of resource there by that contracted 20 hours, 25 hours per month, where that officer can work one-on-one with someone. But you know, we as an organisation don't get involved in their financials.
Can I just add? So, and every tenant is different, right? So, some are quite needy, and some just want us to get the hell out of the way and leave them alone. You know, so kind of that's the sensitivity that Lynn's trying to manage every day is which one is which and how far do you go. At the end of the day, we're the landlord, so we work closely with the social services, but we aren't actually a social service.
Look, I'm just wondering, with our age-friendly approach that's just been put in place, whether there might be the ability to even form a volunteer relationship there or something along that sort of line, that even the Older Persons Council could help facilitate being put in place, or something along that sort of line, potentially.
I think there's a lot of opportunities.
Yeah, that's great. Great to you open to them. Sorry, just be with me here for a sec. Actually, it's just noting, it was actually Jackie's comment around the split or potential for split age situations as such. I was just talking to someone recently who would say 70, but the wife might be 55, 56, but they have need. What would be the scenario with that? That would, if you had sort of like, should we say, an elderly person whose partner is quite a bit younger, I'm picking that would work against them with regards to point structure as such?
Not so much from a point structure, but currently the policy and model we're working under restricts it to people 65 and over.
Okay,
so unfortunately, they are disadvantaged if they potentially have a partner who's 50. But often, nice in many cases, that person's still working also. So that's another, because the policy states not in regular paid employment. So I've got one or two, maybe two maximum on the register who may have been on there for a while, and gradually they're aging, and also their income status is changing. But at some point or other, it might be they do fully qualify and they'll be in a position to be housed.
Cool. That sort of dovetails into another question, which is, it was mentioned that people from outside the district have been putting names on the register. Do we give priority to people that have spent or had spent time or substantial time in our district? Because fundamentally it's their rates that are paying for this. I'd be a little bit concerned about people applying from outside our district for our retirement housing per se. I prefer it to be, personally, for people that have spent some time in our district prior to this.
There's a bit of a balance there. I don't disagree with what you've said. So currently the policy does allow for people outside of the district to apply for our housing. The point system that's used does disadvantage people outside of the district initially, so it takes them a lot longer to reach maximum points. They start off with 2 and they've got to get to 10 potentially to catch up to the others. So they're likely going to be waiting longer. But sometimes people who are living currently outside of the district have whānau here in our district, have previously lived in our district and are wanting to return home. So it's not just a case of necessarily from outside of the district. But there is, there has been 1 or 2 interested parties from outside of the district who have absolutely no connection to our district. And maybe that's not so ideal. They see the coast as a lovely lifestyle choice.
That's great. Thank you for that response, Lynn.
Just as something a little bit lighter, I'd just share with you, recently I had an application inquiry from someone who was aged 100. I thought that was quite exciting.
Yes. Yeah, look, it's how much housing do we provide, really, isn't it? We've got people in a similar sort of situation turning up to Mary's guest house because they just don't have any other options and that sort of stuff, which is not an ideal situation by any stretch of the imagination. It's just great that we're addressing this, and Lynn, from what I'm gathering and hearing from you, we're taking that holistic approach with regards to things. We're not necessarily this is this, and this. We are looking at circumstances, and we are looking after what is a vulnerable part of our community. Which is absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much for your work in that space. Any other questions at all? Lovely. I think we'll close that one off, that update off. Thank you very much, ladies. Thanks, Claire.
I'll send you the Spotify link.
Yes. Okay, so in relation to 7.1, we have a couple of recommendations there. A and B, they're noting recommendations. Do I have a mover for those? Thanks, Kathy. Kathy moving. Do I have a seconder? Thanks, Rob. Seconding. Kathy, do you have any? No. Any debate? No. All those in favour? Aye. That's passed. Thank you very much. Also, look, just tidying up a bit of a loose end with regards to apologies. There were, just Mike's was the one that was received. Jackie's here now, which is great. But I just need a mover to accept those. You okay with that, Nigel? Seconder, Lawrence, fantastic. All those in favour? Thank you very much. That's moved. Moving on to 7.2, Asset Management Plan for Cemeteries. Gareth and Trevor.
Well, actually, I'll introduce this.
And Mike. Tag team approach is what we'd like to say. Thank you very much.
So can I please reintroduce you to Trevor Jackson, who you've met before, but maybe not Jen, who's sitting down there, and a bit like Lynn with older person's housing. So Jen's the person who deals at the coalface with all the issues we have to do with cemetery, and actually sometimes Urapa as well. So Jen's at the coalface, or the grave face. Jennifer, yeah. And a bit like Lynn, we'll be happy to answer any detailed questions. But before we do that, we've got just a few slides to talk you through with respect to the actual asset management plan itself. Thanks, Jess. So of all the things we do in the council, there's probably nothing more important than this. Well, I think I'd heavily argue with anyone who said that there was. And if you stuff this up, there is nothing more embarrassing or kind of undignifying as when you stuff this stuff up, right? And there's been many examples in New Zealand that you've probably watched where things haven't gone well, and it's awful. So what we're going to do today is just run you through our assets and a couple of the issues that we have. Cemeteries never pop up in any sexy vision statement or strategic document, but actually this is a requirement under the legislations. We are required to provide sanitary cemetery services, and as I say, it's easy to kind of gloss over this and joke about it, but actually this is a really serious business and it's a high risk. And we just wanted to alert you to a couple of the risks that we have with respect to this asset at the moment. One of those risks is around capacity, and the other risk is around data. So I'm just going to head straight over to Claire, who's going to talk you through the assets.
So Trevor and I are going to tag team on this. So I'll just cover. We're going to just give you some highlighted points about each of the cemeteries that we look after. And this is Otaki Cemetery, and you can see some nice images up there. It's our third highest demand, so there's 4 cemeteries. This one is second from the bottom in terms of greatest use. It's got capacity up until 2080, so it's got good sufficient capacity. Part of our improvement plan, when we look at how we improve our management of assets and our asset management planning processes, is to review the capacity, and that's a process that we will going through and setting in place for a review every 5 years. At the moment, Otaki is the only cemetery that allows natural burials, and at present, yeah. So that's some interesting information about Otaki. Are there any questions about this particular one?
Not necessarily this one, but there's another cemetery in Otaki in Pukekaraka Hill. Does council have any connection with that?
So today we're just focusing on council-owned assets. Now later on, Jen does talk to others, including sometimes Urapa. We do provide advice, but today we're strictly sticking to the assets that the council owns and operates.
Lovely. Jackie.
Yeah, we've recently had to have council staff locking the gates on the cemetery, possibly day and night, due to the awful behaviour up there that's been going on up there. That's quite a short term. Is there any long-term extra asset infrastructure you're going to put in there to help keep it safe? Or is that still something that you're very much working over with police at the moment?
No. Sorry, Jack, just clarifying, you're talking that there's been some behaviour up there that's not been acceptable.
Not been acceptable.
And what do we put in place for that at the moment?
The gates, we're locking the gates.
Just locking the gates
So
in the
it's
evening.
walk-in only, yeah.
Right, okay. So probably needs
Which is great, yeah.
Yeah, but probably needs a bit of discussion. When someone passes away, emotions typically they always run high, and sometimes those emotions
Yeah, if I can just comment, one of the benefits of what you've done though with the gates is that we've had for 9 months people sleeping up there in vehicles at night, and also during the day having other people visit them, and meth and pee being sold and used, and them lying around there all day long. So which is quite frightening for normal visitors. So personally, I'm quite encouraged to see those gates, some controls put on those gates at the present time.
Thanks, Jackie. I think Trev got something.
Yeah, we are working and monitoring this on a daily basis, really, and certainly with our operational staff, they give us good feedback, and we are working with the community police around this. And since we have been starting closing the gates, we have noticed a drop-off in ongoing vandalism up there as well. So it is working. So we're just going to monitor it and see how we go on it. And once we I suppose we see a big drop-off, then we can open the gates up again. But it's probably a thing that we will monitor closely and just see if it's going to continue on for a while. So.
Thank you. Over to the next one then, which is the Waikanae Cemetery, and Trevor will update you on that one.
So out of all the cemeteries, this is our highest demand over the last 10 years. And if you go up and visit the cemetery, and all our cemeteries are very beautiful and well maintained, you can actually see on the ground that we are actually getting full to capacity. So what we've done, we've engaged an external consultant, which is Exist, to undertake a feasibility study around future demand for the cemetery. And the results have come out is that we've got a 7-year burial capacity remaining up at the cemetery. Ideally, you want 10 years. So currently 7 years. So that means that we are looking for new cemetery land in the Waikanae ward, and this is one process that we've started recently with this external consultant. So it is one that's ongoing, and we are getting close now to finalising 3 options for the replacement of the cemetery within the area. So obviously there's certain criteria we've got to meet in terms of geotech work, cultural and ecological assessment. So the whole process will take, what we understand from talking to other councils, from identifying potential land, is that the whole process will take 5 to 7 years from go to woe. So we are getting on that sort of risk management type aspect in terms of with identifying we've got 7-year burial capacity left, and actually identifying land and then sort of developing it as we go. We are going to sort of meet that crunch, that's potentially that criteria. So that's one thing we are mindful of and working very hard to access some lands very, very quickly. We have got some money in the long-term plan, and hopefully by the end of next year we will be able to purchase some land for the future development of that particular cemetery.
Sorry, question.
That's right. Yeah,
is the
Jackie.
crematorium still operating up there, and is it still leased and things?
Yes, yeah, yes it is, yeah. Yes, yeah.
Cool.
Right, so onto the Paraparaumu Cemetery. This cemetery was developed in 1917, so it's not the oldest one. Our oldest cemetery actually is Otaki. And as Mike mentioned earlier, one thing about our older cemeteries, anything in terms of the Heritage New Zealand Act, anything older than 1900 is deemed to be an archaeological site. So we have to, consider those historical factors when we're looking at that. But fortunately, we're not obliged to write any sort of conservation plan or anything like that. But we do have to, consider any developments when looking at those older sites. But for Paraparaumu Cemetery, it's currently closed. It's a closed cemetery for any new burials. That's because it's at capacity for new burials. It is available for second interments, and it is available for ashes. So there is some capacity there, but in terms of new burials, interments, there's no more capacity. The one thing that one needs to consider as a council when you're looking at a closed cemetery is that it's an ongoing liability. So you'll have that as an asset in the future that you continue to have to maintain, but there'll be no additional fees or charges that come in for any new burial. So that's a consideration for council just to be aware of. The one thing that you also consider when you're looking at a cemetery is how positively they fit in with the current open place strategy. They're lovely open places for recreational walking. They have wheelchair accessibility, so lovely, beautiful places to walk and a lovely, peaceful environment. So all of our cemeteries have those assets and fit those criteria.
A question, please, Mr. Chair.
Sorry, Kathy?
Question, all right. And I don't know, I should have maybe take this offline, but 3 or 4 weeks ago, because I've got family members, a few family members buried down there, my daughter regularly takes flowers down there, and when she went there about a month or two ago, everything was gone, all the flowers. So does council regularly clean out people's flowers and things that they put there? Like permanent artificial ones as well?
No, no, unless they're actually on the grave itself, on the grass area. If it's on the headstone, then no, they should still be there. So
okay. She noticed a whole heap of others were taken as well.
Yeah, so sometimes we do, and that's the ongoing problem with some of the the vandalism and some of the situations we have where some flowers do get taken. But yeah, unfortunately, it's one of those things. Yeah, no,
I
it
meant
wasn't
to follow
council.
it up
Yeah,
earlier, and I'd forgotten about it, but you just reminded me of it.
The only time our operational team will remove flowers if they're actually on the grass area in front of the grave, which isn't allowed. So, and when they're coming to do the mowing and operational stuff, work up there as well.
Oh, okay, yeah, I thought it was a bit odd.
Yeah.
So, yeah, okay, thank you.
Cool.
Okay, so Awatapu?
Yeah, Awatapu is our youngest and second highest in demand cemetery, with a current burial capacity through to 2059. We are looking at developing. We haven't got it across any of our cemeteries an ashes scattering area, and this is one thing that we do get asked on a regular basis: is where can we scatter our ashes, other than the actual interring them at any cemetery. So we have got some land up at the back of Awatapu behind the crematorium, which we are looking at as part of the long-term plan, developing that into an ashes scattering area, and walkway and commemorative garden as well. So that's part of the plan there. Otherwise, it's a well-maintained cemetery with a crematorium attached as well that's leased by Captive Funeral Homes.
Yes, Nigel.
Yeah, just a question around that. So this reaches capacity at 2059. Is that what are the population projections that's predicated on?
That's taken on our current population growth that through that we do work with other sections. Yeah,
growth?
that's right. Yeah, but obviously that's reviewed every 5 years as depending on how the growth cycle goes as well. So we do currently review that capacity target.
Okay, and presumably that services Raumati.
Yes, it does. That's right.
At the moment that you.
Yeah.
And Paikokiki doesn't have cemetery, right?
No, it's Paikokiki as well, that's right, yeah. And it's part of our strategy moving forward with the Waikanai replacement is I suppose, to have that discussion as well around, as land's getting more precious around our region as well, do we go with one, instead of ward-based cemeteries, which we've got currently, one big cemetery that will service the whole region, right? And that's what discussion moving forward, I suppose, in years to come, and also build resilience into our cemeteries, so if we do have a major event, that we do have capacity around, and that's part of the future planning around the Waikanae replacement cemetery as well.
Yeah, I think for Porirua City, Whenua Tapu, there are other cemeteries in Porirua, of course, but that's become like the major place to go. But just back on the other point, when you talk about Waikanae, which is going to need replacement in 7 years, and the process takes 5 to 7 years. So do we currently own land that we can be thinking about, or is this going to be a land acquisition?
This is going to be it's going to be land acquisition we're looking at. So we are identifying sort of 3 potential sites at the moment. We have, it's fallen on our lap really, of talking to one of our people we work with, and one of our contractors up there is actually looking at selling land into Horo. So he's got about 5 hectares, and he's got a neighbour next door selling other land he wants to sell as well. So we are investigating that, and we'll be carrying out some geotech work and ecological assessment on that. So we might be fortunate that it fits all the criteria in terms of stormwater and also sort of flood protection as well. So we might be very fortunate, and we might have some land falling on our laps, but we've got to work through the process still and determine whether it's suitable.
So it's 5 to 7 years, but we've already started. It's actually in this LTP.
No, cool, thanks.
Lovely.
All right, so moving on to funding. Currently, the cemeteries are funded 30 to 40% by district-wide rates and 60 to 70% by user fees. Current capex is 4.7 million, which is the bulk of that is the land purchase amount that we've got in there, and OPEX of 4.8. So very heavy on the OPEX needs, lots of mowing and general maintenance that needs to happen. So those are the biggest expenses. Trevor, correct me if I'm wrong on that.
No, you're correct.
Sorry, Button. The capex is for the next 10 years. Is that sort of a part and parcel of the land that you're looking at purchasing? That's what that allowance is for?
Yeah. Yes, we've got 3 million in there for the land purchase, or just over 3 million for the land purchase as well. That's included in there, and then we have about a 60,000 yearly capex budget for renewal of beams or adding beams into each cemetery.
Lovely, thank you.
So just a question in relation to the funding. So how much does it cost to bury somebody?
Jenny's just left actually, so I'll get her to answer in a minute. So when she comes back in, she's got the costs in there as well, so she can.
And does that vary from cemetery to cemetery, or do we have a fixed fee?
Fixed fee. Yeah.
There are some variations in there depending on what day of the Jen?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's the user fee for a burial at the moment?
Jen, so if I could just ask you to use your microphone, it'd be much appreciated. Thanks. It'll just take a moment for the red light to come on.
There we go. So currently to purchase a monumental or plaque burial plot is $1,932, and so that's if you live in the district, and if you're out of district it's $4,082 to purchase the plot.
So, sorry, just for clarity there, is that the minimum cost for a plot? I mean, if you're like putting just a memorial plaque in or something along that sort of line, or?
But the memorial would come on top, I imagine. That's just for the hole in the ground, right?
Yeah, so that's the cost, that's just for the plot.
Yep.
There's a separate cost, different cost if you're purchasing a cremation garden plot or a cremation beam plot. And obviously the pricing around what monument you're going to put there isn't done through us, it's done through the mason.
I respect that, yeah. It'd be nice to, this is coming to the meeting next week, isn't it?
No, this is coming in November.
Just maybe have an idea as part of the report, just of the different cost structures that we have, just more from a reference perspective.
We can circulate. It's actually in the user fees in your.
Oh, okay.
So we
Just
can.
it's pretty easy report. Pop it in. Yep, that's cool. Lovely. Thank you. Oh, yes, Nigel.
Just one more question in relation to that. So it costs $1,900. If people can't afford that, if people find themselves in a situation where they can't afford that, do we assist with that?
We don't so much assist, but we do help where we can, and it's on a case-by-case basis. We have had a case in the past where a homeless person passed away, and we worked in cooperation with a local funeral home, where they pay for the funeral and we donate to the land. So it is a case-by-case basis. We don't sort of, as approach them. We are aware that as it was highlighted, I think, on the Sunday programme last week about the rising costs of funerals as well. So we've got to be mindful of that as well moving forward and how we manage that. And it is on a case-by-case basis currently.
Okay, that's good.
That was really what I was going to cover next, was the cost of funerals being such a great concern at the moment for certain people. And yeah, so you've covered that off, and I'll make sure to add the cost structure for funerals into the AMP. Yeah. So our next slide is looking at the condition. So our condition surveys have just been completed, so this slide is slightly out of date, but in general our cemeteries are in good and very good condition. Most of the components that we'd be considering in terms of our condition assessments would be things such as roading, footpaths, fencing, park benches and signage. Individual monuments are generally maintained by the families of the deceased, or in the case of returned service members, it would be potentially covered by the RSA, or older cemeteries, even older than that, like around the 1900s, I think that's managed by the Department of Internal Affairs. So data improvement is ongoing, and that's always something that this is a snapshot in time again, and that's ongoing as we move through time.
Sorry, I'll just jump in again. Urupa that are, and I'm assuming that there are Urupa that are under iwi authority, does council have a role in that? Either in the maintenance or in support, or?
It's certainly in support, and I've had a meeting yesterday with Ra and Harriata around one Lurapa in our area. So yeah, we are engaging more, and they're coming to us and asking. So it is again on a case-by-case basis, but we are keen to add support where we can and work and help them in partnership as well. So yeah, that is a continuing conversation we're having with them and supporting where we can.
But that's advisory support. We don't fund our own any Urupa.
And the other one I just wonder about, like in terms of mapping where Urupa are, this council, and I'm sure other councils have as well, have designated roads to go through Urupa. It seems horrendous now, but that was part of the plan at one stage. So I was just wondering if there is some sort of comprehensive mapping of the area that shows where everything is.
You're right to focus on data, but our biggest challenge with data at the moment is actually our own data. So as a country, we're kind of going from a book-based hard copy system to which has all sorts of kind of risks around it, to a smarter digital system. So for us, from our data and information, that's what we're focused on at the moment. There's definitely an issue with Urupa, some of which before the courts at the moment, but we haven't actually turned our attention to that. We're focusing on our own assets first, but that is something that we could certainly look at down the track once we've got our own house in order.
So following Mike's point there, we have recently had a procurement process going with securing a software program for management of our cemeteries, and we have engaged Datacom to come up with a software management system for us. It will replace our current form-based 4-stage process that Jenny manages, and is very sort of time-consuming, and it does hold a lot of risk to council in terms of the process we do follow and capturing the information and storing that information. Following on from that, so that new software program should be up and running early next year, which will help sort of streamline the process and also reduce the risk to council, and also, more importantly, hold those historical records and update our interment records, and then we can actually plan for future capacity across all our cemeteries then. So it will help us with future planning, which is important as well.
So this is really, again, just a data point of interest, how our number of residents we have to hectares of cemetery land. So we've looked at different regions, different councils, different cities, and at the moment we are a lot of residents to 1 hectare of land more than some of the other places that we considered. However, this is just a data point, and that will obviously adjust once we've got the purchased the new land for the Waikanai cemetery, and potentially as we move to considering a greater strategic approach if we look at one major cemetery for the entire district. So again, that's a strategic consideration for the future. Just a data point of interest.
Is it just because they have greater capacity, reserve capacity?
Yep. So they've got more hectares. So, for example, Wellington City Council has purchased a massive piece of land to cover basically the whole of Wellington.
Macro.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Question time.
So just before we do that, can I just conclude with two key things I would like to leave you with? First is Waikanai. So that's kind of strategically that's our biggest issue from a physical point of view. But whilst it's going to be tight, we are onto that, and stuff is happening there. And the second is the data integrity issue. So as we digitise stuff, we're cleansing our data. Finding a few things that are kind of are risky, so we're working on that. But having kind of said that, just like with older person's housing, we're in really, really good hands. So between Trevor and Jen in particular, we've got a couple of excellent staff who are fronting with the funeral directors every day, right? And that's not an easy thing to do, but and actually pull all the funeral directors together so that when we talk about digitising our system, we need to integrate with them, right? So and funeral directors, if you watch that guy on TV, they're not like that at all, right? They're much. What's his name?
Astute business people.
They're pretty hard people to deal with, but these guys do a fantastic job. And the other people who do a really good job for us are the guys on the ground. There's two guys down the depot. Is it Bill and Ben? Ben and Bob. Ben and Bob. Who are fantastic. Deal with bereaved families, really. The guys that actually dig the holes and do that stuff. So we've got really, really good staff here. Some big challenges, but we couldn't be better placed with respect to the skills and attitudes we have in-house to actually deal with what's in front of us.
Awesome.
But have you taken any questions? Thank you.
Cool. Johnny?
Yeah, just in regards to your data and stuff like that, do we currently have like a grave, like a searchable thing for graves and stuff like that on our website? And because I know there are sort of sites where you can actually see photos of the headstones and all that sort of stuff as well. So do we currently have that, or?
So no, but that's the world we'd like to get in. So I've got a military background. There's a thing called Cenotaph that's got everyone that ever served in the New Zealand Defence Force. You get exactly that. So we'd love to be in that position. At the moment, we've got is it a big green book?
Yeah.
Go, Jen. Yeah.
Yeah, go, Jen, go.
So currently you can search online. So if you search for KCDC, you can search for people. It will show you if there's a photo available. It will show you a photo of the headstone, and it will give you all the details. I wouldn't say it was the greatest system, and yeah, so we are working on a better system. So there is a current system, but the new one will be a lot better, and it will show you the exact location of where that plot is within the cemetery, as well as better updated photos.
Yes, just on that, we're currently working with our GIS team to make that happen as well as part of this new software update. So that will be happening next year.
Just in relation to the churches, because some of our churches, historically churches had a burial grounds for the parish sort of thing. So do they, I'm not aware of a bunch of them, but there is the one in Waikanai just in Elizabeth Street. It's got a little cemetery at the back.
Yeah.
So do they, or is this the same situation Mike was talking about with the Urupa? Is this kind of like a separate thing and we just let them do their thing?
Yes, that's the one we've been talking about. That is, we're working with them sort of on that, but it does. We don't do any operational work in there at all, but it is one that we're doing some partnership work with them around sort of some of the maintenance, and there's one-offs as well around some consultation. But other than that, that's falls in that category.
And there has been talk. We don't do it so much in New Zealand. Certainly, they do it in the States, where a private developer comes along and buys a piece of land and sets up a happy ending bloody cemetery or whatever they call it. So has that been something that we've ever considered here at all, about having a private cemetery, or is that just outside the core function of what we do?
Well, I believe it would be outside our core function. If you look across all councils across the country, they're all, or cemeteries across the country, they're all council operated and managed, and we're all going through. We're in constant contact with Wellington, Poiloa, and Upper and Lower Hutt as well, and they're all going through the same processes we are currently around software and also acquiring more land as well. So it's one of those things we're in constant consultation with as well.
Yeah. I just wondered whether funeral homes themselves might have their own cemeteries, but they don't.
They do lease land, and they run the crematoriums on our land as well, so they do have that aspect on there as well, and that's one of our, with a new land purchase, that could be an option as well. But currently, and it's a bit different from Poiloa, the council actually own their crematorium down there where we lease ours, and it's run by the funeral homes.
Guy?
Yeah, that actually leads on to my question. I know some of the cemetery homes are leasing land, and how many companies or funeral homes are doing this in Kapiti, and how does it work?
Currently, we're working with, was there 3 or 4, Jen? I think you might funeral homes that we working with up in the area. The main ones we deal with. There's probably 3 that own crematorium or lease crematorium or own the sites for it. So yeah, that's we're at the situation at the moment.
Do they actually own the land on?
No, they lease the land off us and own the building. So yeah.
So is that 3? 3
are
doing?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it's 3, Jen, isn't it? I know it's Kapiti, Waikanae, and Waikanae've got their own one as well. Yeah, and Awatapu, Waikanae.
Yeah, we've got a crematorium at Awatapu, which is leased, and then and then crematorium at Waikanae, which is leased. Otaki and Parapara Umu don't have crematorium.
It's 2.
So
2. Yeah.
and they're leased to Waikanae Funeral Home and Kapiti Coast Funeral Home. Excuse me.
How does that work? Is it like a commercial type of agreement, and they pay per square metre of the land they're using, or?
That's a good question. I don't know. I can't answer that one at the moment.
Oh, so we have it's a ground lease. We have about 110 of these across the district, Guy, and there are strict covenants and controls around that lease. But basically, it's a commercial enterprise on council land.
All right, Jackie, I'll just go to Kim on screen, if that's right.
Kia ora. Just a question around, you mentioned that we give advisory support to other urupa, because I know there is one at Pukekaraka, and then there's Angiatea Church in Otaki, and there's other around Kapiti. Why is it, do we give any financial support to those urupa, even though they're not council owned? They are, if they weren't there, then the council owned cemetery would be probably wouldn't have the protected hope. So do we give any financial support to those other urupa at all?
So there is in place through Te Whaka Minenga or Kapiti's partnership with council. I'm just reading off my notes, apologies. An annual non-contestable grant made to 4 iwi urupa on an annual basis. So there is funding that is provided to those 4 urupa.
Okay, and what's the amount of that? Because I'm just looking at the figures on your report, and it looks like there's about approximately just under 120k OPEX, CAPEX, and 120k OPEX for each of the cemeteries council owned.
That's outside of our budget, yeah.
No, we can come back to you with exact numbers around that, Kim, but no one in the room seems to have that data at the fingertips. We'll come back to you.
That's outside of this funding that we've spoken about in terms of the CAPEX and OPEX of the operation of the actual asset management plan.
Yeah, so that's grants funding, right? So
Yes.
it's not reflected in what you've got in front of you, Kim, but we'll find out what that number is and flick it through.
Yeah, maybe they could just come to the soft meeting
Yeah.
as well, part of that information.
Great, thank you.
Is that it? You happy with that, Kim?
Yes, that's fine.
Marvellous. Jackie?
Just given what happened during recent flooding in Queenstown, are there any of our internments that have been identified as being at risk from high water table and natural hazards?
Yes, we do have situations like that around sort of 3 of our cemeteries. So yeah, our operations team are constantly dealing with high water tables in them as well, and often have to get pumps to pump out grave sites before they're buried as well. So it is a constant problem we do have. We are trying to address it, and it's part of with looking at for the new land. We've got to be conscious of high water tables and position of our cemeteries as well. So it is, unfortunately, it's one of those things with our current situation that we are dealing with. Our operation team constantly dealing with that. Awatapu is quite a wet site as well. In terms of maintenance as well. It makes it hard for the operational team up there as well. But yeah, we are mindful and trying to do all we can to mitigate those situations as well.
Thanks, that really does go well to explaining some of the OPEX costs, yeah. Thanks.
Right, I just have a couple of questions myself. First one's just in relation to your slide on page, well, actually there's no page numbers, of the Old Taki Cemetery. I just noticed the RV. I don't know, maybe it's a typo and it's back to front, but you've got the capital value at 580 and land value at 70,000. That's quite different to the rest of the sites. I was just wondering, capital value of 580,000. I would have thought there would be a relatively low capital value there. Basically, there's nothing there that's of capital value.
It's possible I switch those two around. I'll double check that.
Nothing major. It just
Yep.
it seemed out of whack with the RVs on the other three sites. As such, where the land value was quite significant.
Yeah.
I wasn't too sure if there was any actual asset. We don't have a crematorium, say for argument's sake, up there.
Yeah.
Such,
No, I
so-
think I switched the two around. Apologies.
Yeah, oh, it's no biggie. It's just picking that one up. That's just a bit of housekeeping on that one.
Good point.
I'm just curious if we what's the story? I mean, we saw in the news a while back. The RSA, well, there was a group going through from a military perspective that were cleaning headstones and that sort of stuff, and some places were sort of quite hesitant to allow them to do it. Well, actually, outright banned them from doing it. What's been our policy in that space?
Well, we actually work with the RSA on this as well, and
Yes.
their advice is they don't like them cleaned. They like them natural and left to be naturally sort of weathered over time.
Okay.
So yeah, they don't encourage it, so we work with them. They have the say while we manage and operate the cemeteries. They have we work very
Okay, no,
closely
that's
with
fair
the
enough.
RSAs in that area. So, and the same with internal affairs. There's about 5 burials that we have from World War One, and we work very closely with internal affairs about managing and maintaining their sites as well.
Lovely. No, that's great to know. The other thing was just after coming back, my wife does a lot of research with regard to genealogy and that sort of scenario. So is this new data platform that we're looking at going to make that a bit easier to do, so to speak?
Yes, it is. Yeah, that's one of the reasons we're doing it. So we are capturing that information, but before we go to that and migrate it across, we've got to make sure, like Mike was saying, that the current data is correct and the information we feed into it. But that's one of the big reasons that is very popular these days, and people like looking into past histories, and that's one of the reasons that we're doing it.
I'm just curious, is there any ability for people to put some link information or some links within that frame that might take them to like family histories or something along that sort of line? Is there going to be the ability to do that within the system at all?
I think we're developing this program as we go, Martin. So it's going to be one of those things that it's going to be taken over in a number of stages and steps. So it's, we're getting the booking system first, and then obviously the mapping as well, and then that will certainly come as part of its process further down the track. So certainly we're keen to do that.
Yeah, as long as we've got the capacity to do that
that's
on the
right,
front
yeah.
end, that sort of stuff, that would be a bit of a shame to not be able to bolt it on because of that.
Yeah, definitely agree. Yeah.
Yeah, because again, I think there's a big resurgence, especially with all the genealogy and
That's
the
right.
fact that you DNA testing and that sort of thing there as well.
Yeah.
It'd be quite nice to have almost an interactive sort of scenario there.
Yeah, I like they certainly ran the history around the RSA sites as well. We could fit that in
definitely.
there as well.
That could be linked back to your
links in
local
there as well,
RSA
so,
or local families, that sort of thing there as well.
definitely,
And again, a lot of people doing research that can it must be linked to the research that they're doing as well.
Yeah.
No, that would be fantastic. Do I have any other questions at all? No? Okay, so we've got a couple of recommendations for this one as well. They're both noting as well. Do I have a mover of that? Yep, Nigel's moving. Do I have a seconder? Kathy seconding. Nigel, no, waving that. Any debate? Nope. Fantastic. Sorry? All those in favour? Aye. Fantastic. Right, we're going to adjourn for a coffee and tea break. Okay. Well, I was thinking that, but I thought, look, just in literally just 5 minutes, just go grab a tea or coffee or something along that sort of line, because we've just got the minutes to finish off. A bit of an update from Lawrence with regards to